You're listening to The Edge of Reckoning. I'm Sue.
And I'm Neil.
And this is a podcast about navigating life's turning points with awareness, honesty, and heart.
We're two Gen X friends exploring what it means to meet change with open eyes and an open mind.
Thanks for being here. Let's begin. Welcome back to The Edge of Reckoning. I'm Sue.
And I'm Neil.
In the last episode, do you remember, we talked about equanimity and how to meet life with less judgment and more balance. And today, I think we want to talk about what comes after that, after the raw emotions of a reckoning and when they no longer consume you. And then we're at that moment right now where we're asking, now what?
Now what? For me, that's like a holding pattern. It's like living between what was and what hasn't really arrived yet. It's a time when the grip on how I see myself starts to loosen a little bit.
And some people I've heard call this the liminal space. I think we actually called it that also, which I'll define as a threshold and kind of suspended between two realities. It's sort of like we were talking about Jell-O, right? It's like the fruit in the Jell-O is just suspended there.
Floating. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. I'm still very much inside the Jell-O, actually. And oddly enough, what I'm discovering is as I wiggle in the Jell-O itself, that's where kind of some of my growth is actually happening, because I'm slowing down enough to take the time to kind of look at some stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's quiet in the Jell-O. I don't know how long we're going to keep talking about the Jell-O.
That metaphor to death, yeah.
But it's like, I guess just learning how to begin again with a new perspective and finding that peace.
Yeah. I guess what kind of surprised me is that the lessons here apply really not only to these major life upheavals, but to like everyday irritations as well. We talked about this the other day, that these massive events can occur in our lives and we have to deal with them. Well, the same processes are there. It's like a same inner mental mechanism that's always at work. It's how we perceive, how we interpret, how we react, regardless of how big this moment is. And so the reckoning that I'm going through is pretty darn huge, but at the same time, I'm having all these little moments in my life that give me this very similar challenges of how I choose to look at things.
We started by looking at the reckoning, both of us, just to survive it. How are we going to get through this? But over time, it became more clear that our conditioning is shaping how we meet every moment. And then learning to live in balance isn't just recovery, it's kind of an awakening.
Yeah. So I guess before we kind of talk about what next, it helps to briefly kind of recap what we've been uncovering over several months. And essentially the reckoning that happens, something in our life just doesn't feel right. And the emotion shows up in our body and our mind starts to instantly try to make meaning out of that emotion that's happening in our body. And when the moment doesn't really match what our expectations are, we get pulled into this crazy looping. We called it being lit, being lost in our thoughts, where we endlessly play them over and over and over. And what we're trying to do is look at that process and see if there's a way to kind of break it.
Yeah. And it's a trap, I feel like. But yeah, then after that, we start looking for evidence, because we don't want to live in like a delusional world. So we look for evidence that we have been wronged, and we begin to replay the experience over and over, almost to like validate it for ourselves. And we tell the stories and everything like that. And then it's like we have this inner judge in our head that's just dropping verdicts one after another. And that's really not okay.
No. And it tells us most of the time that we're not okay. It validates the fact that we have an issue. It's like, see, I told you this happened and this happened and this happened. I started to call this emotional stacking, where I'd find all the bad things happening in my life and I'd just pile them on top and then stick them in that Jell-O and watch them wiggle. You know, it becomes a bit overwhelming. But I think we're starting to learn that we can kind of break this cycle to have that kind of awakening where we're bringing a new level of attention and awareness to the reactions that we're having when things don't really go our way.
Yeah, awareness is key for sure.
Yeah.
And really like tuning into your nervous system regulation, because all of this is dysregulation, honestly. So as you start noticing emotions and sensations like coming up through your body, when you do, that's the time to slow down your mind's reaction. And that's the key word. And then just breathe for a moment so that you can respond and not just have these knee jerk reactions.
Yeah.
But your mind will like jump to try to make sense of, what am I experiencing right now? Is it familiar? Have I had this? Like, it just starts going through the archives. But what we're learning to do is slow down that process and respond again rather than react.
Yeah, that's a big one, because if you can't slow down, you get a lot more time to gather information about what really is going on. So if I feel that surge in my body when maybe somebody says something or I get a text, something small, I can actually use these techniques right there too. What is it that I'm really freaking out about? And what I'm discovering is often it has very little to do with the actual experience that I'm having in that moment.
Yeah.
It's usually like the experience becomes a trigger for something that I didn't deal with years ago. It's the discomfort that I never really dealt with that I just stored deep into my mind.
And it's so easy to pick that out on other people, you know, and it's the hardest thing to do. And I know like we're going through this and we talk about this all the time, is like, why did I respond that way? I wanted to respond differently, but I'm still stuck in this trap. And even going through this and being super aware and heightened, we still, both you and I, have moments where we're like, ugh, I wish I was beyond this already, you know? But I'm learning that the most discomfort arises when our sense of identity is being challenged.
Yeah, that's a concept that we really should look at. There's some books that have been written about that very thing. What I know is that the person that I was before my reckoning has really changed a lot. But then again, as I think about it, maybe what I'm saying is that it's my identity, not necessarily the person, the essence of who I am. I think it has to be something deeper. I think my identity has always been tied to the things that I do and how people perceive me. But in my case, when you can no longer do those things that defined you, who the hell are you after that? You know,
Right.
because your identity is like, I'm no longer a trumpet player, no longer a conductor, no longer a teacher, all that. So what is left?
Right.
Right?
You had a lot tied into
Just
that.
sit there inside that reckoning thinking there's nothing here. Right?
Yeah. And then that's when the tables turn on you as you were a teacher. The reckoning now becomes your teacher. And
Yeah.
then when all that dust settles, you'll see that you don't go back to who you were. Something new hopefully will emerge. And that's a big part of it. It's like you're not going backwards, right? You were always you, regardless of all the layers of all those identities that were stacked on top of you. You were still you shining through. So if we can take the time to just kind of look at what is emerging, what do you honestly, what do you like about yourself that's emerging that was like kind of buried under everything? It's not a new person. It's you.
So you're saying you really don't go back to who you were, right? Can't really get back to normal, especially if something's been really taken away from you, right? What is normal?
Normal's gone, but your brain hates that. Hates it. So it's cracking open. Your identity's like being ripped apart and shedding. Like we had that cocoon phase that we talked about. And the suffering is the clinging to that old self.
Yeah, well, I'd say clinging to the old identity, because the self in my
Right,
mind
exactly.
is
Sorry.
essence. And a lot of this is semantics. We talked about this earlier. It's like you got the self, your personality, your identity. But identity to me is just so wrapped in what I think people perceive of me based on the things that I've done and I've accomplished. Plus all the roles that you inherit too, right?
I mean, yeah, I know we talked about this early on as far as like from the moment you're born, you're a baby boy, you're a baby girl, and you're a brother, you're a sister, you're a son, you're a daughter, you're taking on roles automatically. And then our society and cultures force different expectations on that we adopt. And that's change. Obviously, those things change as society changes,
Yeah.
but there's definitely that identity of the job you choose, the major that you choose in college, what your talents are. All those things feed into and kind of bury what's underneath. I love the word authenticity.
All the identity, all the roles that you play sometimes like detract from the true essence of who you are.
Yeah. Have you ever met someone like at work and then you meet them outside of work and they're like two different people?
Yeah. Because they put the face on, right?
They're wearing
And
a mask almost.
I think we all do to some because
Sure.
we kind of have to. But I think a reckoning is like such a unique time where the mask is like ripped off your face. And there you are, like, looking at Darth Vader's face for the first time. You know what I mean?
Right. That's what it feels like almost,
It's
right?
like, oh my God,
I'm
I'm
being
seeing.
you're being exposed and you're vulnerable and you're just like have no more shell.
It's a matter of, I think, just ultimately trying to get back to the authentic self. Because if we listen to anything we've talked about earlier, we've conditioned ourselves so much along the way to be a certain way for certain people, for ourselves. And in my case, I was a slave to what I thought other people thought about me. It's the nature of being a performer, like what I'm doing. And if they don't, then I got to get back to that practice room. I'm not sure of a lot of things, to be honest with you, because this whole reckoning is really, it takes the ground underneath your feet and says, okay, we're going to completely change it. In your
Right.
case, you had West Coast soil under your feet just a few weeks ago, and now you're on the East Coast. That's major upheaval, How do you like go about rebuilding it? What is it that we need to be like being very mindful of when we start to like reinvent ourselves? You're now in a new community. You're now meeting new people. You can be anybody you want right now. You can strip that mask off and truly become your authentic self. It's like a beautiful opportunity. And while I'm saying that, this is something came up to me today with a former student that was going through a lot of problems with his rock band of all things. But that was his whole life is that identity. And I watched him just struggle and be in so much pain because things were kind of falling apart. And it didn't need to have to be that way. There had to be a way for him to see that, there is brightness on the other side of this. And as much as I can see that in my own life right now, that some really nice things are starting to happen as a result of the garbage I've just gone through. Most of what I appreciate is just the sheer enlightenment, so that when I do run into those little things during the day, they don't hit me as hard anymore. I'm not ruminating all the time about what somebody said. All those things start to kind of leave me. And so there is light at the end of the tunnel, but that's hard for people to see it when they're in the middle of it. When you get into this phase, this liminal space, you start to see some of the potential that where things could go very well for you in the future. But what are the traps? If I'm back in this peaceful space, I've just gotten over the emotional garbage, and now I'm rebuilding. What do you see as like the biggest things to keep an eye on?
I think noticing your nervous system. And I think that over time we start to learn how to regulate ourselves again. And I think that when different emotions and feelings kind of start to take over, to be able to be aware of what am I feeling and what's coming up for me. Because as you're, I don't know, morphing, I guess is is the word that comes to mind, and changes are happening and there's a lot of uncertainty, your body is trying to regulate through this dysregulation. And I think for in my case, that's the only thing I can speak to is taking the tiniest little action without needing certainty, if that makes sense. So, what can I do today that I don't need to be certain of that will help me start to re-regulate the normal in my life. And I just start taking tiny little action steps and pushing myself a little further to do things that I wouldn't I'm doing normal in quotes, things that I
Mhm.
wouldn't normally do, but things that deep down I feel like this is something I might want to do. Like I took myself out on a date today to go see a show that I wouldn't ever normally do in Los Angeles or
Yep.
where I was. I'm in a new place. I want to start going to places that I want to go to. I've always wanted to do these things. Didn't really have opportunity or make time for opportunity. I mean, who knows the stories I told myself why I wasn't doing it. But I want to meet people that want to be at these places. I want to be part of an experience, and that's being authentic to myself that I'm feeling. So I feel like taking a tiny little step, an actionable step, and I wasn't certain if I was going to meet anybody or how this was going to make me feel. I was taking a risk. So, and
Sure.
I'm just using what I did as an example, but you can apply that tiniest action, idea to maybe something you can do in your life. And I'm not saying you, Neil, I mean, I am, but I'm saying you to our listening community too. Like, what could you change if you treated like readiness as something that comes after action, if that makes sense?
Mhm. You mentioned about prematurely reconstructing your life. What did you really mean by that?
It's easy to grab onto anything as you're feeling like you're sinking and
Mhm.
you're just grabbing onto something as a lifesaver. So like you lose a job and the first job that comes along, I've done this so many times, or going through a breakup and then just jumping into a new relationship, so just grabbing on something that is similar to what you had just, came from what you just came from.
Bring back the predictability because that's what your mind is looking for, right?
Yeah, yeah, and your mind would be like, "Oh, thank
Oh,
goodness."
finally, I'm not alone, or I got that new gig, or whatever it might be. Yeah, that is a challenge. It seems that you're going to go at whatever pace, but the tendency will be to want to solve things really fast. The reality is that some things are not going to be solved. Some things can't change. They are the way they are. And then the other reality is that everything changes and you have to change with it. And so I think for me, I always jump back to the idea of impermanence, that nothing really lasts forever. And that when I can get into that mindset, I can live in the liminal space a little bit longer because I know it's not going to last forever. It's kind of where I am right now. It's like I don't have a major direction that's pointing me um, to do something new. I'm just going kind of one day at a time and seeing, like, where are those little signals, those little threads that are saying, "Hey, Neil, check this out. Why don't you go try this?" I think that's part of what we need to be able to start to listen for,
Yep,
right?
yep.
It's part of that rebuilding process.
Yeah, and transitions are hard, right? Being able to slow yourself down to see what your options are and being kind to yourself in that space.
Yeah, it seems so easy to say though.
It's so
When you're
hard. Yeah.
feeling like crap, it's like you're like, yeah, that's great. And
Yeah.
talking to my student today, there was nothing that I could really say that was going to get him out of it. And so what I tried to do was just say, "Hey, just feel it, man. Just feel like crap. It's okay. No, it's not going to last forever, but you got to get this out of you
Yeah.
because it will pass. But if you try to like suddenly pretend everything's okay, you do what's called pushing it away.
Hmm.
That's not going to allow you to be able to listen and be present, be able to see these interesting signals of what to do next."
And it's so true. Like those emotions and feelings pop up only to let us know that something isn't right.
Yeah.
It's like the warning sign. But that's where it becomes tricky too, because you don't want to just stay in that loop,
No.
right? You want to be able to say, like, oh, I'm feeling this way for a reason. What is the reason? What is the root of this?
Yeah.
and being able to understand it and process it instead of, oh, yeah, well, I remember feeling like this. Yeah. And just going down that same script that we're so used to. So we spoke earlier about that awareness piece.
Did we ever get into the idea of like how our trauma, if you will, triggers shame and blame?
Hmm.
It's like it's like, is it your fault? It's never my fault. I'm a loser. I shouldn't have done this. And then that I'm a loser becomes my identity,
Right.
which is how we talk to ourselves. Or I'm going to point to you and say, this is all your fault. I can't believe you did this. And I lost my hearing because of you. That's part of the spiraling thing, but none of that's going to make any of this go away.
Right.
It's not going to change anything. But I think that's where we land most of the time because we want to understand it so much. But if we go back to equanimity, if we back up an episode, if you will, and we could meet those moments with saying, hey, it is what it is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just happening. So how am I going to meet this? And know that the process is like looking backwards at what happened will happen for a period of time. Then it has to pivot to being like, I'm here right now. And I can't just be fixating on the issues that happened to me yesterday, if that makes sense. Like, how long do you have to hold on to something before you're done with it? Seriously. Stuff in my baggage from when I was 5, for God's sakes. What's the point?
Well, it's not your fault, right? I mean, it's it's a conditioning thing, and it's
Yeah.
that limiting belief we talked about right out of the gate. Like you
Hmm.
created this story and we hold on to stories. It's just the way our brains work.
Yeah.
Um you can't logic yourself out of like this experience or like an overactive nervous system. And I'm going to keep going back to the nervous system because that's what's happening.
That's
It's
where it
like,
starts, right?
and you can't talk yourself out of it. Like the only way to change this dysregulation that we're going through is to calm yourself down. And I know people have a really, 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 really hard time with this.
Really?
Really hard time with calming themselves down. And because people are like, oh, I don't want to meditate or they don't understand what that means. But small actions that you can ground yourself. And I'm going to say things that might sound kind of silly to people, especially living in cold weather. But taking your shoes off and connecting with the earth is actually grounding yourself, like getting connected to nature. And
You know what that does in all reality is it forces your brain to pay attention for one moment to your feet, that they're touching the ground. And that's why you're getting grounded. And at the heart of it is your attention. And that's really what's happening here. And this is everything we're talking about is you can walk through life blind and just keep doing the same stuff over and let your brain do whatever the frick it wants whenever it wants to. But you can also stop and say, okay, my brain is doing whatever it wants to do right now. I'm going to stop that thought. And I'm gonna do it right now. And I'm just gonna breathe. And I'm not gonna try to solve it. I'm just gonna sit here and allow what you say, that somatic energy to dissipate. Because there's no way you're gonna solve anything when your nervous system is dysregulated. You just can't. So you have to give yourself that time. How much time? As much time as it needs. But it has to be through awareness, because if you're going through this and you're not thinking about your thinking and turning that noise off, that roommate in your head, then you're just going to keep spiraling, and eventually it might dissipate, but it's going to be burned into your memory, and it will come back someday. Guaranteed.
okay, mic drop right there. Thank you. Like you said, taking deep breaths. Amazing. Changing your posture. Amazing. Naming the emotion works. All this stuff works really fast.
Yeah.
The more you do it, yeah, it gives you pause. Gives you pause. Finding humor, laugh at yourself, give
Mhm.
yourself grace. We're humans. There's only so much of this you can actually control, but there's ways for you to have a better, calm time and space if you allow yourself that. I don't think our brains are ready for multitasking, the amount of information that gets puked on us every single day. The stuff that's coming at us is it's just too much for us to take in. And it's hard to calm yourself down when you're getting bombarded with information and feelings and emotions. And you can go on to Facebook right now and see what your fourth grade friend in school was doing like yesterday and how they're feeling about it and how emotionally unstable they are right now. Like we get too much information about people. What do you do with that? It affects us. So turning it down, I mean, I took a media break once for 21 days. It was part of this cleanse I did, the ultimate cleanse. Turned off sugar, turned off, a bunch of other things. But the media break, oh my gosh, it gave me so much clarity. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's a relief because you're just turning down the noise, because really you got enough noise that you're generating yourself in your head, right? And then we add this extra layer of everybody else's crap that we're going to, like the world crap, and we add that to this pot and we stir it all up, and then we wonder why we feel uncomfortable and dysregulated. Yeah, it kind of does. I wanted to push on an interesting point that you're bringing up is you talk about that pause, like listen to your body, gives you that moment, name it. It gives you just that moment to say, okay, I don't have to react to this. I'm just going to feel it. That happens almost on a daily basis to some degree, to different levels. At least it does for me. But there's another kind of pause that I'm sitting in right now, which maybe some of the people listening are too, where you've gone through all the emotional stuff, but this pause is a big pause. It's not just in the moment of that experience. This is a pause that's tying to my whole sense of self and identity. And because all the things that I have done have kind of disappeared, that I'm at this beginning of reinventing myself. What I'm really, truly curious about is, as you're sitting in this new quiet space and you're looking for what's the next step, how do you find those quiet signals that say, hey, why don't you check this out? Why don't you, the only thing I can think of is like maybe something comes across a book or something I see that sparks my interest. And so I start to read it and maybe I go deeper there, or maybe somebody says something. But like, how did you like know that, well, there's a spark here that says I should move across country? Like that was a signal. Some signal gave you that message. Where did you see it? How did you see it?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of factors into it. Wasn't on a whim, but it was a bunch of different things. But it's interesting because I was thinking of like motivation the other day, and it's what motivates somebody to do something. And I don't think this is what I came up with. I think you have to have an action before there's any motivation. And that action is getting up, right? So even going back, unpacking this, because, in the past I worked with a lot of addicts, and the first step is making a change. But how do you make that change? And that's kind of what you're asking me. Like, what was that point where I was like, yeah, I'm going to pack it up and throw my dog and all my stuff in boxes and in the car and drive across country. There was enough evidence for me to know that where I was and what I was doing wasn't moving me forward in my whatever grand plan I have in my head. I don't even know. But I knew I was stuck where I was.
What are those signals that say this is what I kind of need in my life? And I think I'll discover them. What I'm coming to the conclusion is that I just have to trust in that if I'm thinking the right things and not like thinking about what I don't have and all the losses that I have, if I can eliminate that from my thought process and just start being curious about what's out there, and it's going to open up a freedom that's going to lead me to that answer. But the problem is the brain wants to know that answer's right now, You mentioned something about internal alignment before you have external action. It sounds fancy. But what are we really talking about? You're saying we have to be aligned with our thinking, with our awareness. What is that alignment really to you?
Aligning yourself is like being one with yourself. And that's like mind, body, spirit, soul.
They're all in balance, basically, what you're saying, right? So you can't force this, is what you're saying. You can't force all this to happen. Alignment does take time. That's true. But our society says, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it constantly, That alignment is the balance between how you see the world and how you feel about it. Is that kind of what you're saying, or is it's how you feel about it and then how you see it? Does it matter what the order is?
I don't think it matters what the order is. I think that it has to be all meshed together
Yeah.
though. I don't think it's two separate things.
Right. Out of all this that we've been talking about, it seems to me the most challenging part is to change the lens that we use to perceive our reality, to how to see something without judgment, or not to rely on this, whether it's good or bad, clinging your desire, your needs, your wants. And it's so hard to like comprehend the thought of just don't have desires, don't have any needs, stop clinging. It's impossible because that's what humans do. But if we can at least be aware that we're doing, do you think we're that much closer? Does that bring us to alignment?
100%. Your awareness is like the first step in pulling yourself out of like worrying about what other people are thinking or how other people are responding. It all comes back to yourself and your awareness of what it is that you're doing and how you're feeling and, all of that.
As things start to change for how we see the world, some people would say like this awakening, as we referred to earlier, like when you kind of wake up and start to notice that your brain is on that automatic pilot, right? Something that's been interesting is being around people I used to know, and how the tendency of my old identity likes to come back, or I have to justify why I'm not doing the things that I'm doing. There's like this pull to go back to how things were. I'm just wondering how do you kind of avoid that? How do you stay present longer during your day so that you don't get stuck doing things on automatic pilot?
Yeah, I think it's forcing yourself to take different action steps. And I think when you're with some people from your past that may have triggered you or may be triggering something is again bringing in that awareness and becoming more of a witness and a listener
Yeah.
in that situation. So it's almost an out of body experience type of thing. But when you can do that, that will start to change their reaction to you. When you can make these subtle little changes and these little opportunities will pop up as you like, I don't know, maybe around the holidays you tend to see more people from the community or things that you might be able to practice this more, where you run into somebody that you can feel an emotion coming up, you're aware like, oh, that's coming up. Let me just be more aware of this and be witness to it.
Yeah.
And they'll start to understand and change in reaction to how you're changing.
It's the vibrational resonance thing, isn't it? It's like you
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
you tune into where other people are at. I think the thing I've been trying lately is just to listen more when I'm in conversation and pose questions.
Yep.
I'm feeling less of the need to pontificate on, how I see the world, because I already know it. I know how I see things. I'd like to see things differently, and that's what I'm working on. But the only way I'm going to see things differently is if I change the input, right? I need to perceive differently as that input is coming in. If what I'm putting out there is negativity, then that's probably when I'm going to get back, right?
Exactly. And I feel like if you can employ a little empathy
Yeah.
when you're having a conversation with someone, it goes a long way. I had a community event yesterday next door. There's a music center next door and they're having a big holiday event. And a woman was out front saying prayers with people. I'm not a big Jesus follower, but that was her thing and she was preaching her stuff and it was all about that. And I wasn't going to get in her way and be like, yeah, I don't really need to pray with you. I mean, I'll take whatever positive energy anyone's putting out. But it was an interesting exercise for me to take whatever she was saying and give it back to her, and I was providing this space for her, not for myself.
But you felt good in the end too. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
You actually
Yeah.
get more about it. It's like giving presents versus getting them.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's so similar.
But it's a good experience. And if you can do it with strangers, it gets easier to do it with people that you may have had a past with that, might be triggering something inside of you.
You're
So,
basically illuminating a point you made earlier. Like, just start with the small steps, and that might be one of them. Just think about other small steps that are helping me. I think the biggest one is noticing my body when it starts to feel like the tension, and just not reacting to it, just feeling it, and then taking the time to say, well, where is this really coming from? That one's been pretty huge.
I have a couple little takeaways. One is life doesn't get easier, you get more skilled.
Yeah, that's so true. Like all of this, it's so easy to think just push away pain, push away discomfort. But if you listen to that dude, I think his name is Buddha. He's like, life is suffering, and that's part of it. There's good times and there's bad times. They exist. There's discomfort that's going to happen in your life.
You can get peace from discomfort just from responding differently. Yeah. There's always going to be discomfort.
We deny ourselves that so much, It's pretty fascinating. So this particular liminal space that I'm in, I think you're a little bit farther forward in your journey than maybe I am. But what I'm looking at now is like all these conversations that we have are kind of like joining together in a way. It's like we've learned about this somatic awareness, which we keep talking about, which I think is more important than I've ever realized until now. Naming the emotions and trying to pause. Seeing with non-judgment. I think most people are going to struggle with that one because we judge things as being safe or not being safe. It's in our instinctive DNA, right? It's so much of that gets applied in the wrong way. And if you can really start to embrace equanimity, it's a pretty beautiful thing. I think we once talked about the beginner's mind as well. It's like looking at things as if they were appearing to you for the first time, not bringing your old story to that moment.
That's a true gift that you can give yourself for sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And then there's been a lot of writings about radical acceptance. Just stop fighting the past and move to this moment. And I think you're going to find a lot more peace. Even if there's no resolution yet, you're going to at least be able to like breathe. And that's pretty huge for people that are going through absolutely massive changes in their life.
And those 5 things you just listed create such a beautiful foundation for being able to choose differently.
Yeah.
And choosing a new way to interpret our experiences from a more authentic place.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to reduce our misery, isn't it? It's the pain of that initial problem that we're dealing with is so different than the suffering that comes after it. And we've probably talked about that there is a difference between pain and suffering. You can't avoid pain. It's going to happen in life. Discomfort's going to happen. But the suffering that follows, I believe, is totally on you. It's on how we choose to react to it or respond to it. And that's basically at the heart of everything that we've been talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you're listening right now, hello. And if you start to feel a shift, even a tiny little shift, that is the beginning of something new.
Yeah. And you don't need to really know who you're becoming during that shift. You only need to just take one step forward.
Tiny little steps, exactly. And rebuilding an identity is not a project. It's an unfolding.
Yeah, it just kind of evolves over time, right? If you're aware, I think. But remember, it's easy to want to be who you used to be, to cling to that old identity. And when you become the new one, you're going to want to celebrate that too. And maybe there's some healthiness in that. But at the same time, clinging and over identifying with the titles and the roles that you have just limits you in the long run. We need to just be and see things kind of as they are and avoid these labels. We're not the things that we do. I think we're so much deeper than that. I think ultimately we have to find a way to kick back and just like open up our eyes just for a moment and float in the middle of that jello mold, and just like go with
suspend yourself.
Just suspend it, because I'm pretty sure that in a very short time you're going to know what is going to come next. It will appear, and the idea is not to worry that it's going to elude you. It will appear.
100%. If you miss it the first time around, it's going to come back around again. And having patience, my goodness, that is the hardest thing for me. And I force things sometimes where I think that I need to practice patience more, but it's so needed when you're in this space.
Yeah.
Having patience is so hard. And we talked about the culture we live in now where everything is immediate. You know, we got to fix something. It's broken. We got to fix it. We got to do it now. But slowing it down is a gift.
Yeah. And I'm still playing, and I'd like to maybe even go deeper on this, is this whole identity that so much of our suffering is tied to how we just see ourselves, our identity. And when anytime our identity is challenged, we have dissonance. And identity is, to me, is not the true meaning of who I am as a person. And so we could probably go really deep on this. And there's a lot more that we could look at in living life after the major reckoning has started to subside ever so slightly in your life. But for now, maybe this is enough to digest for today. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, as always. We'll see you next time.